Hi, my name's Autumn. My parents told me I wasn't classy enough to be part of our family reunions, so they left me out again and again. No invites, no photos, not even my name on the group texts. They called it tradition. I called it erasure. But what if I told you I didn't just walk away? What if I told you while they were planning another picture-perfect party, I was quietly buying the land beneath their beloved venue? What kind of family builds legacy by cutting their own blood out of the frame? And what happens when that forgotten daughter owns the gate? Would you still call her uninvited? They say Charleston winters are mild, but that morning, the chill sat heavy on the window panes like an accusation. I stood at my kitchen sink, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee that had long gone lukewarm. The early January light cut sharp lines across the hardwood floor, and the silence inside my house made every creak of settling wood sound like a judgment. My phone buzzed once, nothing alarming, just a message from my cousin Lana. I opened it without thinking, expecting a meme or a recipe she knew I wouldn't try. Instead, it was a casual photo of a center table decorated with spring blossoms and a caption, "Can't wait to see everyone at the reunion this year. Looks like Seraphine's outdone herself again." I froze. Reunion? There was no invitation in my mailbox, nothing in my inbox either. I checked my spam folder, my texts, even that old Yahoo account I hadn't touched since grad school. Nothing, not even a forwarded itinerary or an afterthought message. I stared at Lana's photo again, at the candied colors of the centerpiece, at the perfectly symmetrical setup. And suddenly, the image blurred, not from tears, but from the sharpness of the realization cutting too fast through me. They hadn't invited me. Again. I didn't need confirmation. This wasn't the first time. I'd spent years giving them the benefit of the doubt, thinking I might have missed something. Maybe they forgot. Maybe the email went to junk. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. But there was nothing left to assume now. It wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. Back when I was 26, Mom said it the first time, smiling that rehearsed kind of smile she wore to church brunches and HOA meetings. "You know it's not personal, darling," she had said. "You're just not exactly polished for these things." Polished. That word had hung in the air like the scent of her expensive perfume. I didn't even push back. I'd just nodded and swallowed that little insult like it was communion. Today, at 35, I wasn't swallowing anything. I opened our family group chat. The banner still said Reynolds Legacy, with a stock image of an oak tree in the background that Seraphine had picked, probably to match her latest Pinterest board. There it was, an entire thread about the reunion plans, travel tips, outfits, wine pairings. Seraphine's detailed itinerary was posted right there, with everyone tagged. Except me. I typed, "Hope it goes well." Hit send. No one responded. No thumbs up. No hearts. No shocked face emoji. Just silence. I scrolled back, months of it, and saw the pattern laid out like a timeline of erasure. Thanksgiving. My Happy Turkey Day message went unacknowledged. Dad's birthday. I'd sent a video message singing off-key, got nothing back. Christmas? I'd mailed personalized cards, never got so much as a text. But when Seraphine posted about her Easter brunch last year, 22 comments in an hour. Elegant. So classy, sir. Your touch is always impeccable. Even Dad had responded with a string of heart emojis and some inside joke I didn't understand anymore. I should have been used to it, but it still landed like a slap. I stood up from the stool by my kitchen counter and walked over to the small bookshelf in the corner, more from habit than need. On it sat framed pictures of people who didn't include me anymore. Family photos, yes, but edited by time and favoritism. I traced one frame with my fingertip. My graduation photo. I was alone in it. They didn't invite me to be in theirs, so I stopped trying to fit into theirs. I wasn't sad. That part of me had dried up years ago, like the tulips I once brought to Seraphine's baby shower, left in a back room, never unwrapped. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. Instead, I walked to my laptop, flipped it open, and started typing. Not a message, not an essay about feeling forgotten. I searched for venues. I searched like someone who'd stopped asking for a seat and started building her own damn table. Resorts, country clubs, event estates. Most were booked solid, and I didn't know what exactly I was looking for. I just knew it needed to be mine. Not shared, not borrowed, not granted access to. Mine. The Oak Garden Estate caught my eye. It was nestled just 15 minutes outside downtown Charleston. Classic brick, wrought iron gates, a history that was woven into the very soil. It was where they had hosted a family gathering once before. Back when I was 22 and still dumb enough to think I could belong, I clicked on the website. The words on the page shimmered under my gaze like a dare. Host your next unforgettable gathering on sacred Southern ground. I hovered over the Inquire button. My hand didn't tremble. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't even angry. But for the first time in my life, I didn't want to be invited. I wanted to own the place. The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in my bedroom. I hadn't moved since clicking that Inquire button. My coffee cup was still on the nightstand, now cold enough to sting if I sipped it. The clock on the wall ticked loud in the silence. Midnight had passed long ago, but sleep hadn't so much as flirted with me. I wasn't restless in the way people usually mean. I wasn't tossing and turning or scrolling aimlessly through social media. No, I was wide awake, but somewhere else entirely. My mind had gone back 17 years, and I was standing, once again, in front of the mirror in Mom's guest room, holding that awful cream-colored dress against my body. Seraphine had called me a few days before, telling me the family was hosting a garden formal gathering at the Oak Garden. Her voice was syrupy sweet, like it always was when she was talking to someone she didn't respect. Cream or beige, soft colors, classic. Think country club chic, she'd said, like she was reading from one of her lifestyle magazines. I'd saved up to buy that dress. It wasn't new, but it was mine. I'd found it tucked between a row of dusty bridesmaid gowns at a secondhand shop near school. The day of the event, I remember walking up to the venue, hopeful, nervous, just wanting to blend in for once, wanting to be part of it. But the second I stepped onto the lawn, I knew something was wrong. Everyone, every woman, every girl, even the toddlers, was wearing emerald green, jewel-toned, coordinated, rich-looking green. And there I was, washed out in pale cream, standing out like a blank space on a page they'd already written without me. Mom didn't even try to hide it. She looked me over once, blinked slowly, and said, "Oh, honey, you do stand out. Not in the way you'd hope, though." She chuckled like it was a joke, then walked off. No one invited me into any group pictures. I stood near the mimosa station most of the afternoon, holding a paper plate with too many crackers and pretending to check my phone that didn't have service. I left early. I told myself I had homework. But truth was, I didn't know how much longer I could pretend I didn't hear them laughing behind their sunglasses. Lying in my bed now, that memory wasn't just vivid, it was alive. And I hated how much of me still ached from it. I reached for the drawer beside my bed, pulled out a stack of old family photos I kept in a shoebox labeled Maisk, short for mistake, at least in my head. Thumbing through them, I found one from that very day. The whole family lined up in front of the iron gates at Oak Garden, all in green, all smiling, Seraphine in the center like the star she always cast herself as. I wasn't in it. I remembered standing off to the side when they took it. Someone had said, "Oh, let's just get the siblings and parents for this one." And I, being the good little doormat I'd trained myself to be, had nodded and stepped back. But here's the thing. I was in one photo. Well, not all of me, just my arm. In another shot, a group hug, you could see a hand reaching out, trying to rest on Dad's shoulder, cut off by a sloppy crop job. That was me. That awkward limb, frozen in time, edited out like an afterthought. And they'd put that photo in the official family album. The one posted on the private family site. The one they all looked through every year like a scrapbook of who mattered. I logged in again. I don't even know why. Hope is a stubborn, pathetic thing. There it was. The Reynolds Family Reunion, 2006. My name was listed below one of the group shots, misspelled. Autumn Reynolds. No correction, no tag, No photo of me, just that misshaped ghost of a name attached to people who pretended I wasn't theirs. I closed the laptop slowly. The silence in my room now felt like something I could suffocate in. That's when it hit me. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't clumsiness. This was deliberate. They hadn't overlooked me. They had removed me. With precision. With care. Like they were pruning the family tree for aesthetics. It wasn't that I wasn't classy enough. It was that I didn't play the role they wrote. I didn't dress the way they wanted. I didn't smile on cue. I didn't marry someone who ran in their circles or fake enough small talk to survive their Sunday brunches. So they cropped me out, literally and figuratively. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, barefoot, the floor cold under my heels. I opened the drawer by the fridge and pulled out tape, a magnet, and the cropped photo. I pinned it to the refrigerator door. Right next to my grocery list and the note I left myself every Monday. You are not what they say you are. I scribbled a new note underneath the photo. Not this time. Then I opened my laptop again, this time with purpose. The oak garden wasn't available, booked for the summer reunion by, of course, the Reynolds Family Trust, my family, but land registry records were public. I dug through the county's online portal, clicking deeper, eyes scanning fast, and there it was. The venue was leased, not owned. The land beneath it, that was listed under a local trust company. I knew that name. I'd seen it on other properties. It wasn't owned by the family. It was just rented, meaning I could buy the land. Not yet, not loud, not brash, but strategically. I could own the very foundation of the place they'd reserved to celebrate themselves, without me. I closed my laptop again, this time with a slow, measured calm. My chest felt tight, but not with sadness, with something else. Resolve. They wanted perfect photos. Fine, I was about to give them one they'd never crop me out of. I didn't sleep that night. After closing the county site, I sat still for a while, watching the blinking cursor on my laptop screen like it might spell out a path forward. By morning, the cursor was gone, replaced by daylight creeping through the blinds. I showered, dressed in autopilot, and headed to the office. Not because I had anything urgent to do, but because I needed the structure. My routine had always been my way of keeping chaos from seeping in through the cracks. At my desk, I placed the cropped family photo beside my keyboard. It sat there like a quiet witness. Next to it, a small yellow sticky note with 5 handwritten words. Buy your place at the table. I'd scribbled it during a meeting last week when my mind drifted. I hadn't meant for it to become a mantra, but lately, it was starting to feel like one. I tried to work, responded to a few client emails, reviewed some mock-ups for a course redesign, but my focus kept slipping. My eyes wandered back to the photo. That arm. My arm. Cropped out like a mistake. At lunch, I walked across the street to the coffee shop near the corner, the one with the soft music and the uneven tile floors. I ordered a black coffee, grabbed a corner table, and pulled out the small album my grandmother had given me the year before she passed. It was wrapped in a floral cloth cover, frayed around the edges, and still smelled faintly of her house, lemons, cinnamon, and old paper. Tucked inside, between 2 pages of Polaroids and faded birthday cards, was a receipt. Not just any receipt. It was from the thrift store off Montague Avenue. The dress. The cream one. I hadn't seen that in years. And suddenly, I was 17 again. I remembered how proud I was finding it. Gently used. Classic silhouette, modest neckline. The tag had said $89, marked down to $22. I'd paid in crumpled bills and quarters I'd been saving from my tutoring jobs. When I showed it to Seraphine the day before the party, she smirked. "Well, you tried," she said, flipping her hair back like she was auditioning for a shampoo commercial. The party was formal garden style, hosted at the Oak Garden, same place as this year's reunion. The dress code, according to Seraphine, was soft neutrals. Cream, beige, light pastels, she had said, with all the smug authority of someone who'd never worn anything from a secondhand store. So I wore my cream dress. Everyone else? Emerald green. Deep, expensive-looking, and coordinated, like they'd planned it that way. Mom gave me a once-over when I arrived. She didn't say hello, just looked at me and muttered, "Well, you certainly stand out." Then turned back to her glass of wine like I wasn't even there. I didn't get included in the photos. Not one. I stood near the back porch most of the night, pretending to scroll through a phone that had no one waiting on the other end. That night, when I got home, I folded the dress carefully and placed it in a shoebox. I never wore it again. Back at home, still in my work clothes, I pulled that very box from the top shelf of my closet. The dress was still there, still soft, still spotless. I held it up to my body, standing in front of the mirror. It didn't hurt anymore, not in the way it used to. I folded it again, placed it in the donation pile near the front door, and walked away without looking back. Some ghosts you don't need to exorcise, you just need to stop feeding them. I returned to my desk and opened another browser tab. The Oak Gardens Parent Trust still showed no movement on the land's ownership. But I bookmarked the registry anyway and made a mental note to talk to Hollis. My phone buzzed just then. It was a calendar reminder. Mom's birthday. I blinked at it. 2 years ago, I'd sent her an expensive bouquet. Tulips, her favorite. I even hand-wrote the card. "Happy birthday, Mom. Hope you feel celebrated. Autumn." 2 days later, she posted a photo of the flowers on Facebook. The caption read, "From my beautiful Seraphine, who always knows how to make her mom feel special." I remember seeing it, reading it 3 times just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. My name was nowhere in the comments. No correction, no mention, nothing. I didn't say anything back then, not to her, not to anyone. But I felt it. And now it was part of the pile. That afternoon, I called Hollis. She answered on the second ring. "I need to ask you something," I said without preamble. "That's usually how our conversations start," she replied dryly. I chuckled. "How hard is it to buy land?" Discreetly. There was a pause, then the sound of her flipping pages or typing. "Depends," she said finally. "Why? Who are you trying to hide from?" "Everyone," I replied, "especially the people who think I don't matter." "Well then," she said, her tone shifting into business mode, "it's harder than you think. But easier if you've been underestimated." She sent me a document packet within the hour. I reviewed every line carefully, taking notes, calculating financials. I wasn't rolling in cash, but I'd saved well. I didn't live lavishly. My expenses were low, and if I played it right, I could make it happen. The next day, after wrapping a Zoom call, I left the office early. I told my assistant I had a personal appointment, which wasn't a lie. I parked a few streets over from the Oak Garden and walked the rest of the way. It was a quiet afternoon. A few groundskeepers trimmed hedges, and a delivery van was unloading wine crates at the back entrance. The wrought iron gate looked just like it had when I was 17, but this time, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I stood there for a while, watching the breeze move through the oak trees, listening to the faint clink of glasses being arranged in the event hall. There was a small sign on the gate, "Reserved for Reynolds Family Reunion, June 22nd. I pulled out my phone, opened the county property site again, and refreshed the page. Still available. Still in play. And I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I finally understood what power felt like. The morning after I'd refreshed the property records for the 3rd time, I texted Hollis to meet me at our usual coffee spot on Wentworth Street. We'd both claimed a small corner booth years ago, tucked behind a half wall, just far enough from the counter to avoid the noise of espresso machines. It wasn't fancy, slightly crooked tables, wobbly chairs, but it was ours. I arrived 10 minutes early. Charleston's light was gold and gentle through the windows, slicing across the ceramic tile in quiet beams. The barista knew me by now. No questions asked, just handed me a black coffee and a cinnamon muffin without a word. Hollis came in just after me, wearing a navy suit jacket over jeans and her signature red lipstick. Always sharp, always prepared. She slid into the seat across from me, her phone already in hand. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said. "I didn't," I admitted, and pulled out the printout I'd folded twice and slipped into my bag. "Take a look." She read silently, then looked up slowly. "They haven't bought the land?" she asked. I shook my head. "They only lease the venue. But the actual property? It's going up for foreclosure next quarter. Hollis raised her eyebrows, lips tightening. You sure you want to play this long game? Because this, she tapped the paper gently, isn't a move you walk back from. I'm not trying to walk back, I said. I'm trying to walk away, with the deed in my name. She leaned back, watching me for a beat. You've changed. I smiled, small and steady. No, I just stopped apologizing for taking up space. There was a moment of silence between us, stretched but not uncomfortable. Then Hollis said, You know, they used to say you got expelled. My heart ticked once, then dropped. What? In law school, she said, sipping her coffee. I met someone from your undergrad. He said, Oh yeah, Autumn Reynolds. Isn't she the one who got kicked out for cheating? I froze. That story followed you? I asked, my voice low. For a while, she said. It fizzled, but still, that kind of thing lingers. I knew exactly where it came from. Malric. Years ago, he'd come to me with a business pitch, something half-baked about a boutique consulting firm. He needed money. A lot of it. I read the proposal, poked holes, and said no. 3 weeks later, whispers started showing up on LinkedIn and Facebook. Comments left on posts, subtle questions in professional circles. Didn't she have some issue in college? Wasn't there some academic trouble? No one ever said it outright. That was the beauty of a lie planted just deeply enough. It didn't have to scream. It just had to stain. I never confronted him. I should have. But at the time, I still thought staying silent meant taking the high road. That's what silence costs, Hollis said quietly. I nodded, fingers curling slightly around my cup. I wasn't just remembering anymore. I was preparing. We finished our coffee with fewer words. Before leaving, Hollis promised to run some quiet searches on the trust's finances. I thanked her, then stepped outside into the crisp air. I wasn't 5 feet from the coffee shop when I heard a voice behind me. Autumn? I turned. It was Mr. Langley, an old family friend, lived 2 blocks from my parents. Last time I saw him, I was in high school, carrying groceries into my car. He smiled, friendly as ever, holding out his phone. Thought I recognized you. Saw this the other day. He showed me a photo, one of Seraphine's posts from last year's reunion. Her kids were in matching khakis, and my parents stood between Seraphine and her husband, all wearing coordinated pastels. You weren't in it, he said, a little too casually. Figured that was on purpose. You know, to keep things elegant. Elegant. The word hit harder than if he'd slapped me. It wasn't just a comment. It was code. Code for unwanted, for too much, for not fitting in. I gave him a polite smile, said I had to run, and turned away before my composure cracked. Walking back to my car, I opened the voice memo app on my phone. Note to self, I whispered. If they won't let you in the picture, own the damn wall it hangs on. I drove home with the windows cracked, Charleston's breeze sweeping away the sharp edges of my thoughts. By the time I got home, my decision was solid. I opened my messages and typed a text to Seraphine. Heard the reunion venue is beautiful. You always did have good taste. The response came 5 minutes later. A single heart emoji. Typical. Dismissive. Lazy. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my email, attached the property documents I'd saved, and sent a message to Hollis. Subject line, Phase 1. That night, after dinner, I sat at my desk with a glass of wine. My laptop was open, spreadsheets and tabs blinking. My financial account was pulled up. I'd been saving for a renovation on my kitchen, maybe a trip to Italy someday. But this was bigger. I transferred funds, moved assets, checked dates, called in one small favor from a former client with real estate experience. Quietly, cleanly. The screen showed the balance. Just enough. I whispered to myself, not out of bravado, but clarity. No one's going to see it coming. Because I wasn't the girl in the cream dress anymore. I wasn't the one watching the photos from the sidelines, trying to read between lines that were never meant to include me. Now, I was the one writing them. After Hollis sent over the legal summary that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, the glow of the screen painting my bedroom in pale blue light. The confirmation was official. The land, the one underneath the venue they so proudly reserved, was in the final stages of title transfer. I didn't smile. Not right away. Instead, I stared at the screen until my reflection in the dark glass stared back. Unreadable. It was strange. For years, I'd swallowed silence, telling myself it was strength. But silence, when weaponized by the wrong people, becomes permission. I closed my laptop, stood, and walked to the closet. There, behind my coats, was a box I hadn't opened in over a decade. The moment I touched it, I felt it. The familiar, unspoken ache of betrayal I'd worked hard to bury. Inside were files, receipts, a few printed emails, and one folded deed application from when I was 24. That was the year I'd saved up enough money from freelance curriculum work to look into buying a small lot just north of Charleston, 5 acres of wooded land near a lake. Dad and I had talked about it over lunch one Saturday. We were at a picnic table near Sullivan's Island. The breeze had carried in the smell of salt and grilled shrimp from the food truck parked nearby. He had smiled as I pulled out the folder and showed him the listing. "You really did this on your own?" he asked. "Every bit of it," I told him. He nodded, proud for a second, then said, "You know, to avoid the tax headaches, I could hold the title under my name for a bit, just until you settle in. That way, it's in the family but protected, less exposure, less risk." He made it sound logical, protective, fatherly. So I agreed. No contracts, no documents, just blood and trust. But when I looked up the land recently, curious, cautious, not expecting anything, I found the title registered to Seraphine. That same day, I saw her post resurface online. A throwback on her Instagram stories. It was a photo of her and Malric standing in front of a half-cleared lot with a "coming soon" sign. The caption read, "Can't wait to design our future family retreat. So grateful to Dad." No one had told me, not a call, not a text, not a single explanation. That land had my dreams poured into it, my future etched onto every dollar I'd saved to buy it, and they'd wrapped it up, rebranded it, and handed it to someone who already had more than enough. I didn't call Dad. I didn't message Seraphine. I just took screenshots. Then I sat at my kitchen table, lit a candle, and laid it all out. Emails, photos, account statements, the full trail of what they'd taken and passed off as a family favor. 2 days later, I drove past the oak garden again. It was early evening. The sun had dipped just enough to cast long shadows over the lawn. I didn't stop this time. I slowed down, looked through the open gate, and kept driving. My hands were calm on the wheel, my chest quiet. Not numb, clear. Later that night, Hollis sent the final ownership confirmation. "You are now the legal owner of Parcel 43B, Charleston County," the subject line read. I stared at the words for a long time. Then came the second email. This one wasn't from her. It had been forwarded to me by my cousin Tessa, who had no idea what she was doing by hitting forward. It was from Seraphine. Subject, "Reunion set, June 22nd. Inside was a detailed announcement about the gathering, with a casual, smiling line at the bottom. "So excited to finally host this year's reunion on the land Dad gifted us years ago," I whispered. "Not anymore?" The next morning, I woke up early and took my time. I brewed coffee, read the local paper, let the morning unfold without rush. Then I pulled out a white envelope and began putting together a package. Inside, I placed a copy of the title transfer, the deed with my name in bold letters. Then, a copy of the social media screenshot of Seraphine's gifted land post. On top, I drew a red line through Seraphine's name. And finally, a single post-it note. Handwritten. Calm, deliberate. "I don't borrow what's mine." I didn't sign it. I sealed the envelope, drove to my parents' house, 10 miles outside downtown, and placed it inside their mailbox. The whole time, I never got out of the car. Just sat for a minute with the engine running, watching the familiar porch where I'd once waited for birthday balloons and Christmas brunches that never came. Then I pulled away. I didn't drive straight home. I took the long way, through side roads I used to know like the back of my hand, past the high school where my name was never on the honor roll board, past the old roller rink where Seraphine had her Sweet 16 party, and I served cake. By the time I returned to my apartment, dusk had fallen. I dropped my purse on the entry table, kicked off my shoes, and poured myself a glass of water. Not wine. Tonight didn't call for celebration, it called for stillness. At the kitchen counter, I rested both palms on the cool granite and let the moment sink in. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom, not to hurt them, not to humiliate them, just to be untethered. But it still stung, because a small part of me, no matter how mature, how evolved, how rational, still wished my dad had fought for me, had called, had said this wasn't right. But he didn't. And now I was the one drawing the lines. That night, just before bed, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Hollis. Subject: Reynolds family, notice of limited access. I clicked it open. Inside were the legal terms, clearly outlined. Restricted use of venue grounds, pending land ownership verification. Access limited to title holder and designated agents. Notice delivered to leaseholder. It was short, clean, undeniable. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, my name was where it belonged. Not in parentheses, not an afterthought, just mine. The comment sat untouched under Seraphine's glossy photo for hours. Can't wait to see how it all unfolds. No likes, no response, just silence, which, in our family, always said more than words ever could. That night, I slept like a stone. No racing thoughts, no tossing, no 3 a.m., replays of conversations I never got to have, just stillness. I woke up to soft sunlight seeping through the curtains and a single email sitting unread in my inbox. Subject: Final transfer complete. It was from Hollis. I tapped it open and scanned the short message. You are now the legal owner of the land beneath the oak garden. Full title attached. There was no thrill, no fist pump, no celebratory song in my head. Just a kind of quiet weight settling into my bones. Not heaviness, just certainty. I whispered to the empty room. No turning back now. While my coffee brewed, I clicked through the attached documents. Everything had gone through. Clean. Undisputed. Legal. That was the thing about buying in silence. It left no trail of panic for others to follow. Flashback to 4 weeks prior. I'd spent my nights working with Hollis to create a shell LLC. The name was generic enough, Jupiter Creek Holdings. Sounds like a lakeside condo developer or a tree nursery. We'd placed the offer anonymously, all cash, a full 15% over asking. The land had been in quiet default for months, owned by a retired couple who'd stopped collecting from the leasing company. They were happy to sell and happier to disappear without drama. No one from the Reynolds family had any idea. They were too busy curating charcuterie boards and ordering custom napkins with the family crest on them. Yes, Seraphine designed one, while I was acquiring the very foundation they were standing on. And I did it with a pen, not a voice, not a confrontation, just documents. A few days after the transfer, Hollis texted me, "Do you want me to notify the venue manager?" I stared at the message for a moment before replying, "Not yet. Let's wait until it hurts." That wasn't cruelty. That was strategy. Let them inflate the balloon. Let them string up the banners and cue the violinists. Then, once everything was in motion, let the pin drop. I created a folder on my laptop named Reclaim. Inside it, I saved every document, title deeds, tax records, correspondence. One by one, I uploaded everything until it was all in one place. My history, rewritten in ink. The next day, I took a slow walk past my parents' house. Not out of nostalgia, but acknowledgement. Their car was in the driveway. The front porch had the same rocking chairs I'd once curled up in after college, hoping for some version of a welcome home that never came. I kept walking. I didn't feel bitter anymore. I felt sovereign. There was a voice in my head as I moved down the sidewalk. The only seat I needed was the table I now owned. That evening, after dinner, I sat down at my writing desk. I pulled out a sheet of plain white paper, uncapped my pen, and wrote a letter. Not to send, just to file. Dear Mom, you taught me that elegance meant exclusion, that silence was a virtue only when it kept others comfortable. So, I learned to speak in different ways, through property lines, through ownership, through presence that doesn't beg for validation. You'll never hear me raise my voice, but you'll feel me, quietly, exactly where it matters. I folded it, placed it in a small metal box with the cropped photo from years ago, and closed the lid. It was no longer grief. It was archiving. That weekend, I cleaned my apartment top to bottom, not out of stress, out of clarity. While polishing the kitchen sink, my phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. I dried my hands, unlocked the screen, and saw it. Seraphine had posted again, a perfectly staged shot in front of the venue gates, her in a flowy cream dress, of all colors. My parents flanking her, smiling with the kind of practiced warmth they reserved for public display. The caption read, "So grateful to finalize our family reunion venue. It's going to be iconic. Grateful for legacy. Grateful for family." Legacy. I stared at the word for a long time. Not envy, not pain, just observation. The audacity of building a stage on someone else's silence. I clicked comment and typed a single sentence. "Can't wait to see how it all unfolds." I didn't add an emoji, just sent it. No reaction. But I knew they saw it. That evening, I sat at the window watching the Charleston sky fade into dusky gold. A breeze rustled the trees, and somewhere nearby, someone was grilling. The smell of charcoal and rosemary floated through the air. For once, I didn't feel like an intruder in my own life. They were preparing for a party. I was preparing the gates to close. I didn't need to guess what they were planning. Seraphine made sure the world saw it before I even had my coffee. As the sun warmed the kitchen tiles under my bare feet, I scrolled through my feed, already half expecting to see something performative. I just didn't realize how loud they'd make the performance. There it was. Reynolds' legacy, multi-generational unity, Southern grace, timeless elegance. Those words were plastered across a poster-style image, framed by pale pink roses and vintage filter overlays. Seraphine had launched a full-blown campaign for the reunion, like it was a red carpet gala. She'd even tagged local community partners, influencers, and event planners. My picture, of course, was nowhere. The first image was a slideshow of the family's greatest hits, wedding photos, holiday dinners, baby showers, all curated to perfection. And I mean curated. I wasn't just missing, I'd been scrubbed. If I hadn't known better, I'd believe I was never part of them at all. And then the video hit. Posted by a Charleston community account, sponsored in big, bold text by Seraphine Reynolds PR. I tapped play with steady hands and braced for what I already knew. It opened with soft piano music, slow panning shots of the Oak Garden's front gate, followed by a series of short interviews. My parents, Corliss and Eldon, sat in front of a flower wall, hands clasped, wearing their Sunday best. "Family is legacy," my mother said, voice calm, rehearsed. "It's about continuity and upholding the values passed down through generations." The next shot showed Seraphine smiling into the camera, her tone syrupy sweet. "We want to showcase what real Southern families stand for: grace, history, and togetherness." Malric appeared next, standing near a lake, speaking with his usual manufactured charm. "This isn't just a gathering, it's a celebration of what we've built." Then came the slideshow, the Reynolds Through the Years segment. There were birthdays, anniversaries, vacations, Seraphine's bridal shower, my parents' vow renewal. The camera cut to group photos with champagne glasses raised in mid-toast, and in every one of them, either I had been removed, blurred behind someone's shoulder, or left out entirely. They didn't just omit me, they erased me. The final slide lingered on a still shot of Corliss, mid-laugh, her hand gently resting on Seraphine's knee. A quote appeared on the screen. "Elegance isn't something you learn, it's something you inherit." Corliss Reynolds. That was the part that stole the air from my lungs. Not because it surprised me, but because it didn't. I didn't cry, I didn't shout, I didn't text Hollis or post anything. Instead, I clicked the 3 dots in the corner of the video, tapped Save to Archive, and titled the file, Public Evidence. I closed the app and stared out the window, watching a neighbor water her begonias. She waved. I waved back, even smiled. It wasn't the first time my family had tried to rebrand history, but this time, they did it publicly. They stepped into the arena, and that meant they were no longer just ghosts pulling strings in the dark. They wanted the world to see a version of the Reynolds family that looked flawless. But someone else saw it too. Later that afternoon, while heating leftovers for lunch, my phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from Aunt May. She was my dad's older sister, the one who always said what everyone else was too polite or too afraid to say. She had shared the video on Facebook and added one line, "Hard to celebrate family when you pretend one doesn't exist." That one comment ignited something unexpected. The post gained traction. Shares. Comments. Questions. Where's Autumn? Isn't she their daughter too? Why does this look like a campaign ad? Within hours, the community page was flooded. People who knew me from school, past jobs, book clubs, even a woman who once sat next to me on a flight to Dallas were tagging me, asking why I wasn't in the video. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They were doing it for me. Later that evening, the group chat lit up like a bonfire. Seraphine, can we not make this about drama right now? Corliss, voice message. Autumn, what did you do? Malric, she's manipulating public perception. She's always been good at flipping things. I took screenshots of every message, each one time-stamped, archived, labeled. There was a time when their panic would have unraveled me. When a voice note from my mother would have sent me spiraling, second-guessing, guilt-tripping myself into silence. But now I saw the truth. They weren't mad because I did something wrong. They were mad because I stopped doing nothing. I stood in front of my mirror that night, brushing my hair slowly, and I saw her again. That younger version of me in the cream dress, standing on the lawn while everyone posed for pictures. I remembered how I'd cried that night, curled up in my room while the party sounds echoed downstairs. Not because they didn't love me, but because I believed they did and couldn't understand why they acted like I wasn't there. But that girl was gone. Voiceover, I thought to myself. Silence used to protect them. Now, it protects me. At 10:43 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Hollis. She'd been quiet all day, which usually meant she was waiting for the right moment. Her text was short. They've called the venue, asked to confirm access for June 22nd. I stared at the message, then slowly typed back, "Let them show up. Then I'll say something." Because some stories don't need to be told ahead of time. They need to be felt. On arrival. The sun rose early that Saturday in Charleston, as if it knew something important was about to unfold. The sky was painted in soft blues and faded oranges, like a backdrop too gentle for what was coming. I was already awake, sitting in my car a mile away from the oak garden, a steaming coffee in my hand, and nothing on the radio. Across town, the Reynolds family was arriving in matching smiles. Seraphine, true to form, showed up first. Her floral dress matched the hand-stitched table runners she'd posted about last week, and her heels clicked with authority on the gravel. Behind her, my parents followed, dressed in soft blues and ivory like the royalty they always imagined themselves to be in public. Cousins trailed in with toddlers and gift bags, unbothered and unaware. They were expecting a photo shoot, a legacy moment. Instead, they were about to walk into a boundary they never saw coming. The event coordinator greeted them with a practiced smile, her clipboard firm in hand. "Good morning," she said cheerfully, then hesitated. "I'm sorry, but I was instructed not to proceed further with setup until clarification is received from the landowner." Seraphine frowned. "We are the landowners," she said, motioning toward my parents. "This is a family-held lease. We've paid the venue." The coordinator didn't flinch. "Yes, but there's a title dispute. As of yesterday, venue access has been revoked due to conflicting ownership. The land itself no longer falls under the previous agreement." That was the moment the confusion began to spread. Murmurs floated through the group like pollen. What's going on? Who's the owner now? What does that mean? Before Seraphine could get another word out, a security guard stepped forward holding a sealed envelope. He handed it to her like it was a wedding invitation. "There's a message inside," he said, "addressed to your family. From Autumn. Seraphine's face hardened the second she saw my name. Her fingers paused just long enough for the cameras to catch her hesitation, because of course, someone had already started recording. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside, she found a single piece of paper, a copy of the notarized deed with my name on it. Below that, a small photo, a cutout from an old family album, where only my blurred hand appeared at the edge of the frame. And beneath it all, in my handwriting, "You told me I wasn't classy enough to stand with you. Now I decide who gets through the gate." She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The silence did the talking. My mother turned pale, her lips parting in disbelief. Eldon didn't speak. He just looked at the paper as if it had been written in another language. Around them, relatives stood stiff, unsure whether to look at each other or pretend not to understand what they were witnessing. One of my cousins, bless his millennial instincts, had already pulled out his phone and whispered, "This is gonna blow up on Facebook." And it did. Back in my car, I watched it unfold in real time, live footage, photos, zoomed-in shots of the deed, tweets from distant relatives. Someone on Reddit even started a thread called Charleston Family Reunion Drama Gone Nuclear. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. Corliss, ever the curator of appearances, tried to recover. "This must be a misunderstanding," she murmured. "Autumn wouldn't do this. She's not—" Her voice caught, unable to finish. Seraphine stepped forward, trying to salvage the moment. "It's probably some legal delay. You know how property records are. We'll sort this out. Everyone, just wait in the cars for a moment while we clarify." But no one moved, because even if the venue's staff hadn't locked the gates, I had. Not physically, emotionally, legally, permanently. I didn't need a megaphone. I didn't need to show up in person. They walked straight into the wall they spent years pretending didn't exist, and found my name on it. I leaned back in the driver's seat, sipping my coffee slowly. The heat was just right now. A mild burn, grounding and satisfying. I didn't post. I didn't gloat. I simply sat in peace, watching their empire of curated perfection shake a little under the weight of truth. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about release. I didn't do this to shame them. I did it to stop begging them, to stop asking for a seat at a table that had already been cleared of my name. I stared out over the city skyline from my vantage point. The breeze brushed against my hair. Everything felt still, not like something had ended, but like something false had finally broken open. Voiceover, if anyone had been there to hear it. Some doors you don't slam shut, you just lock quietly and throw away the key. My phone buzzed once more. A text from my mother. "You'll regret this." I read it slowly, then deleted it without replying. And as I stood outside my car, stretching into the soft morning air, I realized she was wrong. I had nothing left to regret. They lost a venue. I reclaimed a life. 1 month passed. Charleston's early summer had settled in with its usual blend of humidity and cicadas. The headlines about the Reynolds family reunion scandal had all but vanished from public memory, buried beneath the next city drama, weather scare, or mayoral quote gone wrong. But I hadn't forgotten. I was at my co-working space that morning, seated at a window booth overlooking the intersection of Queen and State. A new client pitch deck was open in front of me, and the soft buzz of other freelancers typing and sipping coffee created a kind of peace I'd learned to appreciate. Progress wasn't always loud. Sometimes it looked like a well-organized Google sheet, a contract quietly signed in an email thread, a lunch meeting that ended in a handshake, not a photograph. I didn't announce the new partnership my company had just landed, an educational platform I'd been chasing for over a year. There was no ribbon cutting, no Instagram post, but the numbers in my business account spoke clearly enough. Around 2 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my father. "Your mom's upset. Our finances are complicated. Seraphine's company pulled out. Maybe you could help us stabilize things." The second message came minutes later from Corliss. "This isn't about the past. It's about family. Help us." I read both slowly. No punctuation, no warmth, just convenience. I sat back in my chair, phone in hand, and let the silence expand between me and the glowing screen. Once upon a time, I would have read those words with a knot in my stomach. I would have debated how to reply, how not to sound petty, how to extend grace without looking desperate for approval. But that part of me was gone now. I opened my notes app and started typing. I spent years giving to a family that only saw my name when they needed something. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your scapegoat. I'm not the blank you fill when things get tight. I deleted the whole thing. Instead, I composed a short email with no emotion, no punctuation beyond the required minimum. I hope you find the support you need. Autumn. I clicked send, turned off my notifications, and went back to reviewing my pitch materials. By the following week, the rumors started trickling in. Quiet at first. A sponsor quietly pulling back from one of Seraphine's projects. A business associate of Malrick's suddenly unavailable for meetings. A few local business owners unfollowing the Reynolds family page. I said nothing. Then came the article. A local columnist who'd been covering Charleston's social scene for years posted a subtle but scathing piece in the Gazette. Funny how some families forget who they built their empire on until the foundation walks away. The foundation. That word struck me, not with pain, but with validation. It had always been me, the daughter who showed up early, stayed late, made the centerpieces by hand, the one who paid for her own graduation photos because no one else thought to. The one who learned to hold a grudge like a book, quietly, with knowledge that weighed more than noise. 2 weeks later, I took a day off and drove to the cemetery on the edge of town. My grandmother was buried there, under a willow tree that dropped its branches low enough to offer shade and quiet. I brought a single white rose. Kneeling beside her stone, I brushed off a few fallen leaves and whispered, "I'm not angry anymore, just finished." I didn't stay long. I didn't linger in the past. On the way back, I stopped for groceries, picked up a new ceramic planter, and smiled at the cashier like I wasn't carrying years of history in the trunk of my car. That night, back home, I opened the small metal box that held my keepsakes, the unspoken timeline of everything I'd endured. The cropped photo, still with the ghost of my hand, the fabric swatch from the cream dress, the deed to the land. And now, I added one more thing. A framed photo from our recent company retreat. In it, my staff stood around a bonfire, laughing with their arms around each other. I was in the middle. No one cropped me out. No one tilted away. I placed the new photo on top and closed the lid. Voiceover, if there had been an audience. Sometimes you don't win by being welcomed back in. You win by no longer needing the door to open. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. The silence in my home was no longer empty, it was earned. Just as I reached to turn off the lights for the evening, the doorbell rang. Surprised, I walked to the front and checked through the peephole. No one there. But on the welcome mat was a small envelope, hand-addressed. I picked it up. Inside was a letter. Real ink. Real handwriting. It was from Aunt May. "I'm proud of you," it said. "If you ever want a real family dinner, my table's always open." I didn't cry, but I did smile. The kind of smile that settles into your skin and stays there. I tucked the letter gently into the box, locked it, and turned out the light. They lost a venue. I built a life. And this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the one I chose. Sometimes the most powerful kind of revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, calculated, and rooted in reclaiming your worth. Autumn didn't just close a chapter, she rewrote the narrative on her own terms. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? What would you do if silence was the only thing they gave you? If this story hit close to home, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that challenge, inspire, and stay with you long after they end.